The sweet and hard moment of childbirth had arrived for Katy, a young girl who was having twins and arrived at the hospital with her best friend because her partner had abandoned her. Due to complications in childbirth, one of the children did not survive, but in her infinite motherly love, she placed her two children on her chest, and then something happened that left all the medical staff shocked. Even one of the doctors fainted at what he saw. Katy was barely 18 years old when she thought she had found love. She had been a sweet and obedient child to her parents since she was a little girl, was studious, and dreamed of studying law. She studied dance and was very outstanding in her group at school. She was always the best and represented the institution in reading and math contests, so she was very popular in the city since she won all the competitions in which she participated.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
Her mother was her main driving force. She was a teacher and not only supported her by checking her homework, but also by encouraging her to always strive for the best. She went to all the contests to give her support and posed proudly in all the pictures. Her father was a prominent lawyer and was always working, but when he came home, he devoted all his free time to his princess, as she was the only child. To compensate for the fact that he could not accompany her to competitions nor to her dance performances, he would invite her to lunch and show her off on social media. She was happy with her parents. She loved them both and enjoyed them in different ways. However, for her, they were everything, and she promised them that she was always going to be their pride and joy. In her dance classes, she was also the best and was awarded a scholarship to study in the biggest company in the country. Everything seemed perfect in that family until one afternoon when Katy was leaving the dance company to wait for her mother at the corner coffee shop. She saw her father with a younger girl. She followed him, and upon noticing him, the man hid so as not to give her an explanation. When he arrived home, she was locked in her room and confronted him behind her mother's back. But he assured her that she had mistaken him. However, she assured him that she was convinced it was him. Since then, she lived with doubts and uncertainties around her father, that man whom she considered impeccable and was her role model. However, she tried to overcome that situation by blocking out the memory of that bitter afternoon. However, she saw that the man had changed. He was no longer affectionate with her mother, and he was arriving later and later. When Katy turned 15, they had a big party, and at her party, she saw the woman with whom she had met her father. And once again, he told her that it was his ideas, but the young girl was convinced that her father was a liar. This situation affected her studies, and for the first time, she lost a literature contest, which filled her with anger and frustration. At 17, Katy stopped being the good and studious girl and became a rebel without a cause, because at home, there was only fighting and shouting. She painted her hair in different colors, put piercings in different areas of her body, and started smoking. Her mother suffered when she saw her like that, but she did not understand the reasons. Her father would not dare to say anything to her and was only sorry to see what his little girl had become. In the end, the divorce was inevitable, and that made Katy, in spite of being brilliant, start going out and partying every day until she met Facundo, with whom she fell madly in love. The boy was 10 years her senior, and her father brought it to her attention, but she scoffed in his face, telling him that he was living with a girl 15 years his junior. She was convinced that this was the love of her life and moved in with him. Her mother begged her not to, but she disobeyed. 3 months later, the romance ended, as Katy became ill and was told at the hospital that she was pregnant, and it was twins. Katy was happy because she was going to have twins, so she prepared a special dinner to tell Facundo and his parents the news. When the young man came home from playing pool, she served him and showed them the ultrasound. The boy's parents were startled because he was not working, and they were not willing to support 2 babies. Look, Katy, I wasn't playing house with you. It was a relationship with no strings attached. So if you want to continue by my side, you're going to have to get rid of those brats. Otherwise, you're going to see what you make of your life, said Facundo. She flatly refused to terminate her pregnancy, so the man threw her out into the street with all her clothes. The girl returned to her mother, who welcomed her with open arms. Despite the rift she had with her father, he took care of her financially. The couple and Katy's best friend were her main support during this time. On her birthday, Katy went out to eat with her best friend. and when they were getting dessert, the girl slipped and fell. Labor started, and everything seemed to be going normal, but then complications arose. The girl was screaming in pain and the doctors were running around because since it was a twin birth, anything could happen. She was 2 weeks away from her due date. She was immediately taken to the room and everything started well. A doctor and 2 nurses were assisting her, but little by little, Katy watched as the delivery room filled up with doctors and nurses whose worried faces were evident. She asked what was going on, but they told her not to talk, to save her strength, to keep pushing. She was afraid, for she knew that her children's lives were in danger. Finally, the babies were delivered, but immediately one of them started to turn purple. The boy who had been the last to be born was not breathing, so the doctors began CPR maneuvers to save him. Katy cried and begged to save him, but after 10 minutes of trying to resuscitate him, it was all in vain. The little boy was dead. Katy's surviving baby was placed on her chest, while the other child was wrapped in a sheet and left covered on a small table where they tried to resuscitate him. She cried inconsolably, and in the midst of her grief demanded that they also put her deceased baby boy next to her. The doctors agreed and placed the lifeless little one on her chest right next to his little brother. Katy was crying. The family was complete, but her baby was lifeless. After a few moments, the little one who would have survived placed his little hand on his deceased baby brother in what seemed like a conscious act. Everyone present was shaken to the core. Katy hugged her twins, and soon a true miracle occurred. The little boy who was dead began to breathe. The doctors quickly attended to him and managed to stabilize his pulse. He was alive. The doctors were totally shocked, amazed. Even one of the doctors fainted with emotion because never in his more than 3 decades as a doctor had he witnessed such an event. No one knows what really happened that day in this delivery room, but what they were sure of is that love transcends reason and goes beyond what science can explain. His baby brother came back to life and the family was complete. Now Katy was happy with her 2 beautiful children in the hospital. That episode spread like wildfire, and when the woman was finally in her room, many came to congratulate her. Fortunately, one of the nurses recorded with his cell phone that beautiful moment, which was gone around the world and made her happy with her children. Thanks to the children, her parents were reconciled, and the young woman went back to school. She became a life motivator and became very famous. Facundo saw how well she was doing and decided to look for her to give his last name to the children, but it was too late. She had stopped loving him a couple of years later. Facundo's parents died in a traffic accident, and seeing himself alone, he looked again for the woman he had abandoned, but she was already happy with a man who valued her for her courage and her willpower. It was nothing more and nothing less than that nurse who, in the midst of crying, saw her have the courage to embrace her deceased son. They formed a beautiful family, had a girl, and lived happily with Katy's parents. Meanwhile, the grumpy Facundo ended up submerged in addictions and lost in the street for having despised his children and the girl who loved him unselfishly.